Who was Flynn Rider before Tangled? I mean, long before Flynn Rider fell in love and married Rapunzel, he originally was an orphan turned world-class thief. It was clear, even in Tangled, that he had quite the life story before he met the lost princess. But Tangled the series continued to expand our understanding of who he was in the past. We got to understand who his parents were, how he got involved in a life of crime, and why no one was able to get his nose right. While Flynn Rider might have wanted to hold back some information about where he came from,
That's a little bit of a downer.
today I'm not going to hold back at all. Strap in for this discussion I've been wanting to bring together for years. It's time to fully break down the backstory of Flynn Rider, who grew up and is known today as Eugene Fitzherbert. Now, while the boy who would become Flynn Rider believed for the first 25 years of his life that he was unwanted and alone, the truth was revealed in Tangled the series that he was not. You see, he was actually the son of King Edmund, the ruler of the Dark Kingdom. The purpose of this kingdom was to protect the world from the ancient magic that was sealed inside their gates. For generations, Edmund's family had passed down the responsibility of watching over the mystical opal that was known as the Moonstone. You see, the Moonstone was the dark companion to the Sundrop. While the Sundrop formed into the golden flower and was capable of healing anyone with its magic, the Moonstone destroyed anyone who would seek to possess it. Over time, it built defenses around itself using indestructible black rocks, and those rocks were inevitably used to create the foundations for the Dark Kingdom. And when Edmund's son was born, it seemed that he would inherit the responsibility of keeping the world safe from the Moonstone's limitless power. But King Edmund hoped that his son would have a different destiny to his own. Now, as soon as the queen gave birth to their son, who they originally named to be Horace, the king became obsessed with figuring out a way to destroy the Moonstone. And unfortunately, one night, the curse of the Moonstone became too much for him, and out of desperation, the king attempted to rid the world of the opal himself. But the Moonstone fought back. According to the novel Lost Legends: The Rise of Flynn Rider, which I've linked it for you down below if you like to read or listen to it yourself, on that night, Edmund's wife followed him into the Moonstone's chamber, and when the magic became angered, it destroyed her, and it almost destroyed the kingdom. In an attempt to keep his subjects safe, King Edmund ordered a massive kingdom-wide evacuation. He ordered his subjects to leave and find new homes across the world, and that included his own son. Prince Horace was given to the queen's most trusted handmaiden Maeve, and was ordered to take him far away to somewhere safe. The king commanded her to never tell his son the truth about where he came from, as he feared that if Horace knew about the Dark Kingdom, that he would someday return and suffer the same fate as him. King Edmund allowed Horace to leave his side in hopes that he could live a better life, but no matter how far his son traveled, Edmund never lost track of him. While the king remained committed to his duties looking after the Moonstone, his ravens watched over his son. Maeve would go on to travel across the world with the young prince all the way to the kingdom of Corona. Unfortunately though, she became unable to care for the boy, so she left Horace on the steps of an orphanage known as Miss Clare's Home for Boys. Maeve left him without providing his name or where he came from. She only left a letter stating how important it was to look after that child, and she left the only possessions Edmund wanted his son to have. You see, the king gave his son a stack of books that he had hoped to read to him as he grew up. It was a series of adventures that chronicled the life of Flynn Rider. Now, when Miss Clare took the boy in, she decided to give the child her father's name, which meant from that day on, little Horace would grow up with the name Eugene. And pro tip, if you want to sound like a hardcore Tangled fan, you gotta call him Eugene Fitzherbert. Flynn Rider is a popular stage name for him that comes later, that sometimes Disney still uses in shows and other material, but you and I both know that Rapunzel doesn't fall in love with Flynn Rider. She falls in love with Eugene. Now, a few months after Eugene was left at the orphanage, another baby named Arnwaldo Schnitz arrived after his parents fell ill and died. Eugene grew up with this boy, who he called Arnie, and they became best friends and brothers.
In fact, you could say we're the closest thing either of us ever had to a family.
Aw, you guys.
As they got older, the two boys would read and act out Eugene's Flynn Rider stories to the other kids, and they'd become inspired by his life of riches, ladies, and freedom. They dreamed of a grand life outside of the orphanage.
He had enough money to do anything that he wanted to do. He could go anywhere that he wanted to go. And for a kid with nothing, I don't know. It just seemed like the better option.
And for Eugene specifically, he remained hopeful throughout his childhood that he would someday be able to find his parents.
I used to imagine they were swashbuckling explorers searching the world for treasure, and once they found it, they'd come back and get me.
But the truth was, no one was coming for Eugene, and at the age of 12, that realization sunk in. No one was going to adopt him or his best friend, and education was definitely not the path that called to them either.
I was great in school. Easiest 3 days of my life.
The reality was that even while living near Corona, being an orphan was hard. As an adult, Eugene would even recount that many orphans would go hungry or resort to a life of crime. And we both know which path Eugene took. Now, when Eugene was a boy, he didn't steal much. I mean, Eugene's first steal was a little comb to help him start grooming himself, but something like lying, that was just how they grew up. It's what they did. They had to be creative to get anything they wanted, and when they reached the age where they had to leave Miss Claire, Eugene and Arnie knew that if they wanted to see the world, they'd need to figure out how to do it on their own. And an opportunity definitely came their way. You see, when a circus arrived in Corona, the boys were drawn to it, and soon they were recruited into its ranks by the group's leader, a man known simply as the Baron. Now, he sold them on a life filled with riches, adventure, and family, but the truth was that they were also an entourage of criminals who were plotting to steal the reward that King Frederick and Queen Ariana had accumulated for whoever found their daughter, the lost princess. Now, with the realization that the two boys could reinvent themselves in the circus, Eugene told the Baron that Arnie's name was Lance Strongbow, and he chose to call himself a name that was inspired by his favorite fictional character. A young Eugene created the alias of Flynn Rider. Now, there was another reason, though, that Eugene was interested in getting close to the circus, and that was because he'd found a man who had a symbol on his arm that resembled the symbol that he had grown up seeing on the letter that had come with him when he was dropped off at the orphanage. When Eugene inevitably asked the man, Vetus, about the meaning of his mark, he briefly explained that it was associated with a kingdom that was now destroyed, and he told Eugene that there was no hope of going back. Their people had been scattered across the world, and he himself had abandoned his duties as a member of the Brotherhood, an organization that Eugene would later learn was a collection of warriors who pledged their lives to protecting the world from the Moonstone. At the time, while Eugene was disappointed that he would most likely never be reunited with his parents, he'd inevitably allow that dream to pass so that he could focus on pursuing the wild adventures that were right in front of him. You see, the Baron's circus was filled with thieves and hooligans like Hookhand, his brother Hookfoot, Big Nose, Attila, and the young Stabbington brothers. Even with all of those thugs, though, the young Flynn Rider immediately impressed the Baron, which led to the crime boss bestowing him with a leather satchel that he would carry with him for many years to come. After that, the Baron would have a soft spot for Flynn Rider, even as he routinely betrayed him. You see, even though Eugene and Arnie were excited to be out of the orphanage and making money out in the world, they inevitably betrayed the Baron for the first time when they discreetly returned the lost princess's treasure. The Baron's crew was already fleeing to the city of Varderos by the time they realized that their prize had been taken, but the truth is, that would absolutely not be the last time that Eugene would meet or betray the Baron. You see, the Baron didn't just have a variety of lucrative criminal opportunities for the boys, he also had an attractive daughter named Stallion, who Eugene was absolutely interested in getting to know a little better. Sure, it might have seemed like he didn't have a shot with her at first, but he knew he kept his hair properly groomed, and he was convinced that he would find a way to steal her heart.
It's just a little something I've been cooking up. I call it the blaze.
Blaze? That's barely a smolder.
And I assume that interest in Stallion is what drew Eugene and Arnie to Varderos. There, they continued to get into trouble, only now they actually were forced to come face to face with some competent authorities. You You see, Sheriff Quaid the Blade was able to capture them and throw them into jail a few different times, but somehow they always found a way out. As they would later recount, they were not technically ex-convicts because in all of their years, they were never actually convicted of a crime. But that didn't mean that Eugene was always a great person. You see, early into his career, Eugene began to adopt the mindset that he had to look out for himself over everyone. Even though the boys grew up together, Eugene was constantly pushing the boundaries of what their friendship could endure. I mean, Eugene started lying to Arnie to attempt to keep him out of their biggest scores, and one time he even heartlessly left his friend behind to be captured. Sure, stealing isn't a great thing to do to begin with, but betraying everyone who was close to him, that would have been a truly isolating path. But luckily, a time-traveling Rapunzel got it through Eugene's head at a young age that he had to look out for the people who were closest to him, which was some good advice since the two boys were typically in a lot of trouble together. You see, most of the time, they were indebted to the Baron, but luckily enough for them, after the Baron captured Varderos and transformed the city into his stronghold, he mostly stopped traveling with his crew. But that didn't restrict Eugene and Arnie. Eugene learned multiple languages like Italian on their international adventures.
What? I speak Italian. They have stuff to steal in Italy too, you know.
They watched fighting matches everywhere they went. They got experience with a ton of weaponry, and while they bonded with quite a few lowlifes about their shady career choices, they also made enemies at nearly every port and became master thieves.
We invented techniques that are used by criminals all around the world to this day.
With the extra cash in hand, Eugene's skincare routine and hair products also continued to expand to the point where every part of his appearance was down to a science.
Without proper brow maintenance, the smolder cannot work to full effect.
And with those dashing good looks, over time, he became quite the womanizer. I mean, Eugene broke hearts around the world, and Arnie even recounted once how his best friend seduced the twin daughters of a warlord while he battled the warlord and his direwolves. He also became a legend by individually breaking into the impenetrable castle of Equus. With the Baron's daughter Stallion, they made a fortune when they stole one of the largest diamonds in the world known as the Eye of Pincosta. But the most dangerous thing Flynn Rider ever stole? Well, that was Stallion's heart. You see, early in Eugene's life, he actually got engaged to Stallion, but on the day of the wedding, he kind of left her behind and never came back.
What's to explain? You left me at the altar.
Sure, the cunning and charismatic Flynn Rider had betrayed the Baron many times over the years, but breaking his daughter's heart crossed a line, and from that day on, the Baron has never stopped hunting him. At one point, Eugene and Arnie did foolishly try to work for the Baron again, but of course this was a trap. You see, the Baron had them ransack a caravan that turned out to be transporting Queen Ariana. After looting her royal possessions, the Baron's servant known as the Weasel left them behind to face Corona's royal guard on their own. Now, while I'm pretty sure Flynn Rider was probably pretty well known in Corona before this job, I've got a feeling attempting to steal from the Queen was what inevitably led to Flynn Rider becoming a high-profile wanted criminal throughout the land. I mean, he got a bounty put on his head and the captain and the guards knew him by name. Of course, the wanted poster artist did struggle with his vision, so the Flynn Rider posters weren't super accurate.
They just can't get my nose right.
Clearly, Flynn Rider had built quite a reputation for himself, and it seemed like a pretty great life. Flynn Rider and Lance Strongbow had freedom, they had adventure, and they had criminal charges looming over their heads. What more could they want? Well, the truth is that the good times couldn't last forever. You see, the dynamic duo of Flynn Rider and Lance Strongbow came to an end when Arnie was captured and imprisoned, which left Eugene completely by himself for the first time in his life. Now, there was a time where Eugene was willing to continue his adventures on his own, but eventually he realized he needed a change. He wanted something more for his life, so he turned to what he knew best. He devised a scheme. Without Lance by his side, Eugene recruited the Stabbington brothers to help him steal the crown of the Lost Princess. It was meant to be one last score that he hoped would finally bring him enough gold and treasure to make him happy for the rest of his life. But of course, that scheme didn't go to plan. After being sent away from his family, being raised as an orphan, and traveling the world as a legendary thief, Eugene's life was brought down a completely new path for the better when he stumbled upon a girl locked in a tower. He had found a new dream. Now, to experience all of Eugene Fitzherbert's story beyond the original movie, I highly recommend checking out Tangled the Series on Disney+. It's one of my favorite series of all time, but also consider the novel Lost Legends: Rise of Flynn Rider. Now, I personally listened to it on Audible, and what's really cool about this audiobook specifically is that the voice actor for young Eugene in the series actually returns to the franchise as the narrator. And if you like to listen to it yourself, you can actually get this audiobook for free through my Audible trial link in the description. Again, all you have to do is sign up for Audible through my link below to get yourself this audiobook or any audiobook of your choosing for free. Also, thank you to all of my supporters over on Patreon. If you'd like to support everything we do here, consider joining the community by going to patreon.com/IsaacCarlson. Through Patreon, you can gain access to our private Discord server, where we would love to chat with you about Tangled the Series and everything I'm working on behind the scenes on the channel. Finally, I'm Isaac Carlson. Thanks for watching, and have a magical day.